please.
Thanks a lot, Cian Corley. I would take exception to some of the comments we made that there's been no difference in the last 22 months to where we were then and now. Now we have a vaccine that has worked quite effectively in stopping the infections and deaths in the country. No one ever said that was going to stop infection. I think that has to be clearly pointed out. And we also have a population who's vaccine or who's COVID savvy. Quite early, even before the call from NPHET, people were making decisions not to mix as they had planned to mix in the run-up to Christmas, and they'd made decisions to try and protect their families over the Christmas period. And hopefully it will be the case that we won't have the same situation as last year. But I also want to salute the workers on the front line right across the board, but particularly our healthcare workers who are actually on the coalface in the hospitals and in the ICU units. It's going to be a difficult period over the next couple of weeks and months, I think, for those workers. And I just wanted to raise the issue of the urgency, maybe in relation to the response to building up the booster programme and access to it, because on the 29th of November, the Canal Communities Drugs Task Force at their meeting actually discussed the whole issue of the booster vaccine programme. I had been at the City West Vaccine Centre at that stage that day. I got up there for 8 o'clock in the morning. I was a walk-in. I hadn't received my appointment from the HSE at 60 out of COPD, so I was expecting it a bit earlier. So I was getting a bit anxious and got up there. And I queued along with all the other walk-ins, 60-year-olds, some on walking sticks, some on push chairs, some very healthy, they were grand. We queued for 2 hours in the marquee outside, cold and damp, and then when we got inside it was another 1 hour queuing. So it was quite chaotic from that point of view. And that happened subsequently in Croke Park, out in Swords, and other vaccine centres. So over the last 2 weeks. And the Canal Communities called, after having the discussion, they were saying, really, we have to get these boosters into the people's arms as quick as possible. And they wrote a letter to Minister Donnelly in relation to that on the 29th of November. And the letter essentially said, very succinctly actually, a motion was passed to write to you as Minister for Health asking you to provide the booster vaccine in local communities through whatever means possible, such as primary healthcare centres, GP surgeries, community centres and organisations like SafetyNet. And we ask that you do this as a matter of the utmost urgency in the interest of public health. And these are a group of activists in the task force who, after discussion now, felt that there was a need to send this letter to the Minister. And both myself and Deputy Aongla Snoddy signed that as well as being part of the task force. And I think the key word in that is local and urgent, were the two key words in it. Because even last week I checked that there was only 4 pharmacies in our area doing the vaccine or the booster programme, and one of them, when contacted, said that they weren't going to get any of the boosters until January, and the other 3 were full. So I was quite concerned as well that last week, up to the 8th of December, just 34% of 60 to 69-year-olds were boosted, had their 3rd vaccine. Obviously, that has increased from in the last 8 days, but that was a huge concern. And I believe if access was more local, that would be taken up much, much quicker. And the Omicron is doubling every 2 days, 2 to 3 days. It's going to be the dominant dominant variant in the next week or 2. And I'm just raising the question that, does the Minister feel that 300,000 a week is sufficient? Because that would mean it would take at least, I worked it out there, 8 to 9 weeks to cover the next 2.4 million people that need that vaccine very quickly. And in the meantime, the Omicron is developing and could have a big impact on our hospital care beds and the ICU units. And I think that's a big concern. And just looking quickly at where we have the vaccines at the moment, GPs we're doing about 75 to 85,000 per week, And Dr. Mary Favour was on the radio yesterday saying that that could easily be doubled on the basis of what we're doing now, more and more GPs involved, practices involved in it. So they could be reaching 150 to 170,000 a week over the next number of weeks. And pharmacies, there's Jackie Shanahan was on yesterday from the IPU saying that there's not as many pharmacists involved in the vaccine programme this time around as there was in the summer. In the summer they were doing 50,000 per week. He said that if there was a will and the supplies were there was a capacity to do 80,000 to 90,000. So between GPs and pharmacies, you'd be talking about 240,000 to 260,000 vaccines per week. I didn't know that dentists had come involved. That was the first time I heard that dentists had cancelled recently. So dentists seem to be involved in it now, so I don't know how they would meet that. So then we're really looking at the vaccination centres, pop-up centres, SafeNet, playing a role in backing up 260 to 240,000 vaccines. The vaccination centres are doing 200,000 at the moment now anyway, and we're talking about bringing in the army and extra vaccinators. So I really think that, you know, we should be targeting up to 500,000 a week. We'd have then everybody vaccinated within the next 5 weeks. And in the meantime, Omicron is developing and developing. So I wanted to raise that question because I think it's a serious question. And I think if we leave it for 8 weeks to get everybody vaccinated, and that's not including our 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds. So, and the other point I want to make is just that I think really the TRIPS, last night in the Senate, the TRIPS waiver was discussed and the motion supported, calling on our government to support the TRIPS waiver at the WTO and push the European Commission to support it. And I really think that the fact that the government withdrew their own counter motion, that they should be supporting that.
Thank you very much.